Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Let's get this thing going. Gary, I'm going to ask you to open us up with a prayer before we get started. Would you please, brother?
God, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the privilege and opportunity to be here to witness the business of this community being conducted. We thank you for this airport that your providence has provided to our community for the benefit of all. And we, God, we just ask your blessings on the men and women of this board who volunteered their time to see to the oversight of this great asset that we've got. We just ask your blessings in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Well, before we get going, let's recognize our elected officials here, Mr. Crow and Mr. Ponell. Thank y'all for coming. Appreciate that. And Dave, oh yeah, Dave back there.
I'm hiding behind you.
Okay. Good to have you guys. Good to have you guys. All righty. Anybody want to hear the minutes from last month, February the 18th? Our last meeting. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Okay, Joe, is he not here today?
Joe and Carrie, neither one's here, so I'll run through the
Okay.
FBO report just real briefly.
All right.
Sales were down in March, 41% in February, primarily due to weather. They had 12 no-fly days, so out of 31 days in a month. That's a third of the month where we didn't have anybody flying because of weather. So 101 takeoffs, 99 landings. Not sure who those two took off and never returned. Anyways, 141 touch and goes, 17 visitors. We do have the military scheduled for training on Friday and Saturday, the 17th and 18th. So that's Friday and Saturday this week. The weather looks iffy, so I don't know whether or not they will actually be there or not. One new comment on AirNav, so we continue to maintain a 5-star rating on AirNav after being basically open for 5 years. So that's fantastic. Couldn't do any better on that. And that's it for the FBO report unless somebody's got some questions.
I'm still wondering how y'all count all these planes.
Well, they can, the FBO can see from the counter, they can see out the window, and of course they have the radio sitting right next to them, so they can see them and they can hear them on the radio. So they just have a little, basically just a notebook sitting there, and that they put a tick down every time somebody does a touch and go or a landing or a takeoff, so they just keep track of it. Obviously these numbers don't include flights when they're not there, so you know, those are unaccounted for. And we don't track tail numbers or anything like that, so we just have pure numbers. But the FAA does ask us to keep up with the numbers of takeoffs and landings, so I'm appreciative that the FBO does that for us, because I can't see anything but the parking lot out my window.
Yeah. What's the average for uncontrolled airfield? What takeoff and landings? You know?
Absolutely no idea. I mean, you've got some small airports and some little places down in South Georgia that probably only see, you know, 1 or 2 a day. And then, of course, you've got some that are really very busy. Places like Thomaston, Upton County, and places like that where they don't have air traffic control towers, but they are pretty busy, pretty active airports.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I got a question. Is the FBO, are they working out of the hangar building, or are they still up in the terminal building?
No, they're still up in the terminal building. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with Ed Maxwell, the owner of the FBO, yesterday, and Ed's coming in next week, and we're going to try to finalize the floor plan for those guys for the terminal building. We've gone back and forth with a couple of different options on floor plans for their space over in the hangar. But don't yet have that nailed down. So he's going to come in, I think Tuesday next week. We're going to try to get that nailed down. Once we have a floor plan agreed upon, then we can get some pricing on that, and of course bring that back to you guys or bring it back to the IBA actually, the IBA's facility, before we move forward with that. So hopefully have an agreement next week on that layout, and probably take, I would think, 3 or 4 weeks to get some estimates in on the build-out cost. But it won't take long to build it out, because I mean, obviously they're just looking at interior finish work, so it won't take long to do once we get it there, ready to go.
you got anything else about that? All right, moving on. All righty, Blake, wildlife concerns.
Still haven't received a report back from USDA on the wildlife yet. They originally told us they'd have it to us by the end of March. They didn't get it to us, so I understand their workload is pretty heavy, and they, like every other federal agency, are kind of understaffed. So we continue to wait to get that report back. We have seen increased activity of birds quite significantly this spring. We're using of course, the pyrotechnics, and not every day, but probably every other day or every third day, we're having to use the pyrotechnics out on the airfield for the birds. We've actually had some geese move in the last couple of days, I guess from all the rain. But we're contacting DNR to see what we need to do about the geese. We are in turkey season, so we do have some hunters that are hunting around the airfield for the turkey, which takes care of that issue this time of year when we're in turkey season, and they can do that with their permits. We don't have to have a special permit for that. But other than that, a little bit of decrease in coyote activity. I don't know why, but they seem to have migrated a little bit. I haven't had as much activity with the coyotes in the last month or so. The deer continue to be very active though, so same concerns. Just some are a little more active than others at different times of the year. So I'm going to move on to the changing services. We've kept this on the agenda for a while. This will probably maybe the last time we have this on here. Just wanted to mention that we have switched over everything from the county to the local authority. All gas bills, electric bills, water bills, everything. I guess the last thing to get switched over was the fiber. We were on the county's fiber network. We're now on Parker FiberNet, which is Parker are the folks who actually installed the fiber for the county. So we're on Parker FiberNet now. In terms of IT, we have gone with ComSec, which was recommended by the county's IT department. And we're also using iSafety, which is a local company that actually is a tenant at the airport for some security cameras and for some additional support on our hardware as far as our computers and all are concerned. So pretty much got everything set up now, and so like I said, I'll probably take this off the agenda moving forward. But if there's any questions on anything that we've changed over, or how we've changed it over, or who we've gone with, I'll be glad to answer those. And then finally, the EA update, and again, we just continue to keep this item on here. Not a whole lot to report. The FAA has recently provided some guidance in terms of documents that are out there in the public domain that may be useful to us in terms of our document. So we're doing a little bit of additional research on those right now. So Michael Baker continues to work on the different components, and we'll continue to work with FAA. Probably won't be anything significant to report on the EA for several more months. So if there's any questions there, I'd be glad to answer them.
What was the original time frame on that?
The original time frame had us finishing up in December, and I would say right now we're maybe a month or so behind that schedule probably. So we're probably looking at the first part of 2016.
Okay, about anything for that?
Nothing where the government goes fast.
No kidding. All right, we're gonna let Tom explain this to approve the IGA with the Paulding County Board of Commissioners for school buses to be used for the air show.
That's actually, there are two agenda items in there, number of rooms 5 and 6. The first one is an intergovernmental agreement. It's actually with the Paulding County Board of Education, or actually the Paulding County School District for the school buses, so your agenda's got a typo on it, but I didn't catch that the other day when I was looking at it, but the agreement is with the school district. It's the same agreement that you've had previously. It's for them to provide buses. You're basically leasing buses to be used to transport people to and from the air show that's going to be held. It's the exact same agreement that you had, the same terms and conditions that was in the previous agreement from the previous year. The reason it's on there, the second agreement is the one that's a little bit different. There's an agreement, the second agreement with the Salute America Air Show. That is basically where there's a contract where they're going to reimburse you for any cost that you incur to comply with the first agreement with the one with the school district. The reason it's done that way is because the school district could not contract with a private entity. It does not contract with private individuals or private companies, so it's entered into this intergovernmental agreement. So it's essentially allowing the airport authority to lease its buses from it, and then this company is going to agree with us to reimburse us, the airport authority, for the costs. So,
I move to approve the
Well,
intergovernmental agreement.
I have a question.
Well, you can do it during discussion.
Okay. I have like 4.
I move to approve the intergovernmental agreement.
Second.
All in favor?
I can't
All right.
What if we're gonna have discussion?
All right.
Okay, Tom,
Yes.
there's a few things that on the intergovernmental agreement.
Okay.
On the first one, number, whatever it is, 5. Where it says agreement, should it say IGA up there, an intergovernmental agreement? Second of all, it states that it says Paulding County through the Board of Commissioners, hereafter Airport Authority. We are no longer under the Board of Commissioners, so I don't know if that should be there.
It's not. Those were from the previous one. That's what said the school district brought this over and basically gave us the same agreement that we used last time, changed the dates. But at the heading up at the top, it should, and I've already corrected it on mine, but it should say the Paulding County Airport Authority, not the Board of Commissioners.
And it should, okay, the other thing in there, what are we paying the bus drivers? There is a cost per hour to have bus drivers.
It is. We're reimbursing 50 cents a mile for mileage, and I don't know the exact figure.
When the city uses them at our Christmas tree lighting, we have to pay them $15 an hour.
It's a set rate, it doesn't matter whether we're using them or y'all are using them, or
So
the
it's
school
15.
band is using them, or the football team, it doesn't matter. Any entity that uses them, it's a set price.
Okay, so it's $15 an hour. Okay, and I didn't know if that had to be referenced in that. And on the other one, the second one about the IGA, and this is where the Salute America is going to reimburse us for everything, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so I'm okay with that one, but this one, I want to change.
Yeah, it has a typo. In the very in the introductory paragraph, it does. It reflects from the previous agreement with the Board of
So
Commissioners.
we're voting on just the first one, or are we voting on both?
This
of
is,
them?
my
Just two
motion is
separate.
just for the intergovernmental agreement.
Have you got a bus count? How many buses they gonna need?
15.
Up to 50.
Up to 50.
Is the reason there that Salute America Air Shows is not contracting directly with the school boards because they're not a government entity?
That's
the
right.
reason for it?
Yes.
They do not have the sovereign immunity that the governmental entities carry in liability.
In the past, what we did was we put in the contract a maximum number of buses that we thought we might need. However, in the past, we've not used that maximum number. We've started off the day with a certain number, maybe 20 or 25 or 30, and then we gauge through the day whether we need to add buses, or if we have too many buses, then we send some back. So we've been able to fluctuate those numbers kind of as needed. So I would assume that we'll do the same thing this year. They won't pay for buses that we don't need. So.
Anybody got anything else? How about you guys? You don't have anything?
No, we got a vote for second, we need to vote on
It's what we're fixing to do. All right, all in favor? Okay, Tom.
The second one is just the agreement with Salute America, just to reimburse you for any costs that you incurred as you to comply with the first contract that you entered into, the intergovernmental agreement with the school district. I'll answer any questions if there are any.
it. What about on page 2 where it states, in item 3, where it states about the authority may incur cost pursuant to the IGA, even if the air show is canceled, that the company shall be responsible for purchasing a policy of insurance. I mean, are they purchasing a policy of insurance to protect the themselves or protect us or both?
Well, it's to protect them, but since they're responsible ultimately under contract for any cost that we incur, it protects us as well. So it's basically just a fund for them in case the air show's canceled and you, the authority, incurs costs anyway, then they have a fund by which to pay us back, because they wouldn't be able to pay us back from revenues from the show because it had been canceled.
So would it actually be an insurance policy, or would it be a bond posted or some sort?
Yeah, it's called a cancellation policy. I mean, they sell those just for this very event, in the event the weather or some other circumstances were to cancel the event.
Would the Paulding County Airport Authority be listed as additional insured?
It would be a lost pay, yes, or additional insured on the policy. That's the intent.
Okay, need a motion approved.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? All right. Okay, Blake.
I've got a couple of reports right here in a row. I'll just run through these fairly quickly. Back in March, we did our Georgia Airport Association Legislative Day at the Capitol, and it was a huge success. We had the largest amount of participation that we've actually ever had at a Georgia Airport Association Legislative Day. So we had about 60 representatives from all across the state of Georgia. I say representatives, I mean citizens, not elected officials. There on our Georgia Airport Association Legislative Day, we were honored by the House. We're taken down to the floor and given a resolution of support from the House, which was very, very nice. And we did have all 60 folks that were there were in the gallery at that time. So when they recognized the airports and everyone was able to stand up, the airport folks took up about half of the gallery. So that was a very, very strong showing and a very good showing. We had multiple meetings throughout the day that day with different elected officials concerning budgeting for airports and airport projects. And just as a little bit of background, because we do have a new member sitting right next to me, but the reason that the Georgia Airport Association spends so much time working with the legislators on airport funding is because the FAA only funds certain types of projects. For example, the FAA will not fund a terminal building. The FAA will not fund an instrument landing system. The FAA will not fund maintenance of lighting systems. There's a whole lot of different types of projects that the FAA will not fund. Historically, those have been funded by the state, by the Georgia Department of Transportation. However, since 2008, there's been no state projects because there's been no funds put into Georgia DOT's budget for aviation projects. So 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, no projects were done throughout the state funded by the state. So if a project wasn't funded by the FAA, it just simply didn't get done. So we have a lot of airports that are in pretty bad need right now. Fortunately, we're a new airport, so we don't have a lot of the problems that a lot of the other airports throughout the state do. However, the funding on the state level for airport projects is really very, very important. We have fallen so far behind states like Florida, which spends about $100 million a year on their state program, on Florida DOT. Spends about $100 million a year on airports. Even Alabama, which we don't want to get behind Alabama in anything, but even Alabama is funding airports at about $45–50 million a year. Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, all the states around us have been funding airports on the state level at a much, much higher level than what the state of Georgia has been doing. So the Georgia Airport Association has made it a primary #1 goal over the last several years to try to get airport funding back up to some level where we have some kind of state program. And again, it probably benefits the smaller, more rural airports more than anybody else. But we need for all of our airports to be in good condition. When states or when businesses come to the state of Georgia to look at sites and things like that, there's a saying in the economic development community that no company ever came to look at your site on a Greyhound bus. They don't come in on a bus or on a train, they come in on a plane. So, it's a very, very important issue for us to make sure that we do have a state program, state budget for our airports. Moving on to the Georgia Aerospace Legislative Breakfast. That's a Center of Innovation for Aerospace. We did attend their legislative breakfast out at the Capitol. And the Paulding Aerospace Alliance, I think, was probably the largest group present at the Georgia Aerospace Legislative Breakfast in terms of a single entity in the state of Georgia and representation there. I think we had 7 people from the Paulding Aerospace Alliance there at that legislative breakfast. I know the folks down at Warner Robins had 3 people there. Gulfstream probably had 3. So in terms of aerospace entities throughout the state of Georgia, I think Paulding County was actually the most heavily represented at that breakfast. So I think that says a tremendous amount about our aerospace companies in Paulding County and the dedication that they have, not to just growing their own business, but to growing the entire aerospace industry, not just in Paulding County, but throughout the state of Georgia. And the saying, rising tide floats all boats. As the aerospace industry gets stronger and stronger in the state of Georgia, our local companies get stronger and stronger. Carolyn may be going to speak on this, but Steve Justice was, of course, our guest speaker last week at the Industry Appreciation Breakfast. And for those of you who were there and got to hear his comments, the aerospace industry is now the #1 exporter of products in the state of Georgia and the #2 industry in the state of Georgia behind agribusiness. So it is massive, and that's good for Aerospace Fabricators of Georgia, for Top Flight, for Rare Metals, for West Cobb Engineering. It's good for all of those businesses, which makes it good for all of them. Moving on to the Georgia Airport Association Spring Conference. The conference was held in Atlanta this year, which is the first time that it's ever been held in Atlanta. Conference was very, very well attended. We did plan the conference this year so that it coincided with the Legislative Day, which of course is the reason we had such heavy participation at our Legislative Day. I think because that was so successful this year and because we had such a large representation at the Capitol on the Legislative Day, I suspect that they're going to bring the spring conference back to Atlanta again next year because of that. So that is good for us because obviously it saves us money not having to travel somewhere else in the state to go, but it also provides a bigger opportunity for us to take more people to the spring workshop if it's so close by and there's cost savings associated with it. So that was all I had on that. Any questions?
I've got a question for you. How many aerospace businesses do we have in Paulding County?
We have, in terms of manufacturers, we have AFOG, we have Top Flight, we have West Cobb. Rare Metals is a supplier. They supply raw materials to the aerospace industry. We have Rotorworks, and then we have, of course, some of the aviation businesses that are out at the airport, Paulding Jet Center and the folks at Solar Comet. But the guys, as far as our manufacturers, our aerospace manufacturers, they have collectively, if you took a look at the largest manufacturers in Paulding County, and you lumped the aerospace guys together, they would be the largest manufacturer in Paulding County. I think Cadillac is actually the largest manufacturer, but these guys they're all growing, and they are all now working together. One of the most interesting things to me is that West Cobb Engineering is basically a tooling company. They make tooling for the aerospace industry. AFOG is a metal shop. They do metal parts, metal skins, and AFOG is a composites company. They do all composites. So these guys all do something different, and they all complement each other, because what they're doing now, which they weren't doing prior to 2012 when we brought the Paulding Aerospace Alliance together, is now when AFOG or Top Flight needs tooling done, West Cobb Engineering is going to do it. Whereas previously they were having tooling done in Wichita, Kansas, and all over the place. So these guys are now all working together so that when one of them has some work that the other one can do, that's what they're going to do. And they they also are doing joint partnerships where they can bid on projects now that they couldn't bid on before. West Cobb Engineering couldn't bid on a project that had a large composite component to it because they didn't have that capability. And now they're partnering with AFOG, and they can go after those projects. So they can go after different types of projects. They can go after larger projects because collectively they have more people. Example of that is West Cobb last year in 2014. They got a large metal production project. They couldn't handle it all themselves, so they did half of it, and Top Flight did half of it. So I'm getting those names mixed up. AFOG did half of it, and West Cobb did half of it. So they're working together very, very closely, and it's benefiting all of their companies, and they're all doing very well and growing more than what they would be if they were still working, basically independently as they had been prior to 2012.
How many employees would that be?
AFOG, and I only know these numbers because we had a meeting down at Middle Georgia State College the other day and we talked about this. AFOG has 46.
Go ahead, you're doing right.
AFOG has 46. Top Flight, I think, has 32. West Cobb Engineering, I think, is at 37 or 38. West Cobb Engineering is getting ready to build another building because they need an additional 10 people right now, but they don't have any place to put them. I got an email from Top Flight yesterday. They need an additional 4 people right now. So these companies they're growing and they're trying to hire. One of the biggest issues they have is finding people who can do the type of work that they do. So that's the reason we were down at Middle Georgia State College on Monday, all day meeting with the college staff, because that is what Middle Georgia State College does. Is they have programs that train people in aerospace manufacturing, and we're trying to form a partnership with Middle Georgia State College that would provide the workforce needed by these companies in Paulding County. But in addition to that, it would also provide an avenue for our high school kids who want to work in the aerospace industry to get most of their certification done their junior and senior year of high school, and then be able to finish up their certification just in one semester at Middle Georgia State College, and then come right back here and get a job with one of these companies in Paulding County. So we're working very, very hard to get that pipeline set up so these kids can get that training right out of high school and go to work immediately in a very, very good career, and a career that provides a huge amount of opportunities for them.
Like, can I add a couple of things on that?
Absolutely.
We had an industry tour before our industry appreciation breakfast with Dr. Newcomb with Chattahoochee Tech, and he was really looking to see what the needs of the community, the aerospace companies were. And they're willing to train, and I know that Chattahoochee Tech is looking at adding some more types of classes, et cetera, that can help with these, the needs of the aerospace company.
Do you have to have like an A&P or anything like that to work there? I mean, just
You don't need an A&P. You need an A&P to work on a airplane that needs repair work done. You need an A&P for that. To do the type of work that these guys do, which they're all either making tooling or they're making parts that go on an airplane, you don't need that. You can have a certification, which is what Middle Georgia State College offers, or you can have on-the-job training. But it is difficult for companies, the size of these guys. They can bring one guy in and train him, but like West Cobb that needs 10 people, they don't have the ability to train 10 people at one time. It would take up half the rest of their workforce to try to train 10 people. So that's
they
the
don't do
challenge.
any installation at all.
They don't do any installation at all. They do not. All they do is parts and tooling. Their clients, and if you take a look at their client list, it's the who's who of aviation. Their clients are Cessna, their clients are Gulfstream, their clients are NASA. They do work for pretty much every major aerospace manufacturer in the country between the 4 companies.
And do internationally.
Well, that's great, impressive, very impressive. Anybody got anything else about that? Discuss? All righty. Need a motion to go into closed session, discuss litigation and personnel.
Motion to go into closed session for litigation and personnel. Second.
All in favor?
Thank you. Did your good deed today.
Okay, I need a motion to go back into regular session.
I make a motion, we go back into regular session, report no action was taken in executive session.
I'll make a second.
All in favor? Okay, Ms. Helms, if you don't mind, would you please come up here, stand beside Yolanda, where I can see you. And you know the rule, we got 5 minutes.
Yes.
And just let Tom, look at Tom, let him know when you're gonna get started. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As a citizen, I have some concerns about the environmental assessment and the process to avoid unnecessary costs. We've heard that it's proceeding as it should, with no details, no progress reports of where we are in the process. We've heard that Michael Baker has brought in outside people to do various parts, but we don't know what parts. I would hope that as a board of directors, you've been getting written reports with a more detailed recap of where the environmental progress is. It is imperative each step is handled in accordance with the NEPA guidelines. Based on a letter I recently read, this board could well violate the settlement terms of the environmental assessment. This has been brought to the attention of the FAA, which could lead to dire consequences regarding federal funding. I hope you, as a board of directors, are aware and have seen that correspondence. I realize we have an airport director, paid handsomely by the way, to oversee the day-to-day operations and ongoing assessment. But at these meetings, I don't feel there is clarity or enough detail on the progress. I have reason to be concerned because of several factors. One of which is the airport's decision to allow Propeller to forego the contract requirement of paying a $500,000 escrow in lieu of paying attorney's fees. I just don't understand what that does. It's written in the contract that they were supposed to have an escrow account, and I don't know what one has to do with the other. I would hope that the importance of this has oversight by this board. Yet it didn't appear that you did at the February meeting when Mr. Swafford was asked about it. I asked that you address this issue by requiring Propeller to fulfill the bond contract by putting the escrow balance of $93,000 due. Another concern is the blowout at the end of the runway that cost taxpayers over $136,000 because of a design flaw by the same company that is doing the environmental assessment. There was a tremendous amount of silt as a result of that design flaw, and Michael Baker oversaw the additional repairs at no cost as they took responsibility for the problem related to improper slope and a narrow drain. I'm not asking you to micromanage this environmental assessment or your director, but I'm encouraging you to make sure the information you are getting is more detailed than the verbal updates we hear at these Paulding County Airport Authority meetings, that we could, so that you can make educated and informed decisions. It's the responsibility of this board to prevent unnecessary costs and that you require detailed updates of the progress of the environmental assessment for the overall good of this project and to ensure the environmental assessment is followed precisely as directed by the settlement agreement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris Ballard, of Wildlife. Okay, I need to repeat 5 minutes and look at time to get started.
I'll let you know. Okay.
Good morning, y'all. Today I'd like to speak with you about the wildlife fence that you hope to install around the perimeter of the airport. My first concern is regarding its necessity. After years of operating a general aviation airport without perimeter fencing, I'm unclear of the sudden desire to install a fence, since wildlife strikes have never been much of an issue until your recent pursuit of commercialization. That leads me to believe it must be a mandatory FAA safety requirement for commercial airports, since you never pursued fencing in the past. Surely, you value the safety of all your pilots and passengers and not just those aboard commercial aircraft. So I assume the fencing issue has been initiated by the FAA for reasons of commercialization. If the airport does convert to commercial service and fencing is a requirement, so be it. However, if it doesn't, many residents, myself included, are opposed to its installation since fencing endangers wildlife and interferes with their natural habitat. If fencing is not an FAA requirement, I would appreciate an explanation of why this board wants it and your justification of imposing more tax burden on the county taxpayers, which leads to my next concern, fencing cost. I'm aware the wildlife fence qualifies for FAA funding. However, based on a letter I read from the plaintiff's attorney, Mr. Steenland, sent to the FAA, in addition to several attachments, which included a letter from you, Mr. Swafford, to the Army Corps of Engineers, I have some serious concerns. Based on Mr. Steenland's letter, the plaintiffs have requested the FAA to withhold all airport funding until the completion of the EA. The reason for this request is due to the Airport Authority's disregard of the settlement agreement with your eminent plans to finalize clearing and grubbing the 70 acres of land intended for the terminal area expansion project. According to the settlement reached between the plaintiffs and the FAA in December of 2013, airport land that is subject to environmental review is not to be disturbed for fear of compromising the integrity of the environmental assessment. This 70 acres is included in the EA, which you are all aware of. Yet in your letter to the Corps, Mr. Swafford, you stated that the erosion control, removal of the remaining trees, and grubbing of the 70 acres will take place the first half of 2015, and you anticipate piping of the stream and mass grading to begin the latter part of this year. This letter was sent to the Corps well after the EA had begun, showing your intent to violate the settlement terms. In the event the FAA does withhold all federal funding until the NEPA process is complete, who will provide the $250,000 financing for the wildlife fence if you proceed to put it up? The residents? Would the installation of a fence during environmental assessment even be permitted according to the settlement terms? According to the IGA, the county is committed to loan the Airport Authority reimbursable grant money for projects costing up to $500,000. So I guess that means the Paulding taxpayers will be on the hook to finance the fence if funding is postponed. On behalf of myself and my fellow residents, we do not want to fund it, nor do we want this board to continue putting the cart before the horse. We want you to stop moving forward with commercialization projects like fencing until the Part 139 certificate is granted. In addition, we ask that you abide by your legal obligations of not violating the settlement agreement and the EA. Are you not already a party to 2 lawsuits for inappropriate behavior? IGA or no, this board does not have the right to act illegally or irresponsibly with our money or our airport. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, I've got one. I got a couple for Blake. I look back on some of the former information, even back to last year. When will you think you'll be giving us an update on the capital improvements for the airport and the future projects? It's been probably about a year or more. Exactly when you intend to update us on that?
As far as our capital improvement program, our 5-year
Would
program?
it be in June when you submit the financial statement, proposed financial statement forward, or July? What's before you, or maybe more than once, you gave us like a graph of the future projects, the plans
We do
out
that in
there?
January. I don't know if you missed the meeting in January.
have.
But we do that in January of every year, so we did that in January.
Okay.
I've got all that documentation though that I can forward back out to everyone if everyone wants to see it again. But yeah, it's submitted to the state in January, so that's when I cover it with you guys is in January. But
If you will make me another copy, I'd like that.
absolutely, absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to consider, we'll have to talk about it today, maybe put it on the agenda for next month, but I'd like for us to consider moving these meetings back to the airport. It seems to be appropriate to have, conduct the business of the airport at the airport, but just something to think about.
Well, we'll put that on the agenda. A lot of them remember that. Put it on the agenda. Yeah. All right.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
take about 5 minutes.